Happy New Year and welcome back to London Real. My name is Brian Rose. I'm here with Mr. Nick Gabriel and our guest today is Mr. Stene Jacobs. Welcome.
Thanks, V.
First, I wanted to just thank our sponsors, which is Onit.com, makers of Alpha Brain. I actually didn't give you any Alpha Brain. I'm going to give you some right now. Right. And, of course, of New Mood. I would suggest taking one. I was actually off the Alpha Brain for about 4 days while I was on New Year's, and I took one yesterday, and I had the craziest lucid dream last night.
What happened, dude?
I was off the hizzle, as they would say.
You have to tell me more. You can't just leave that hanging there.
I know. Are you familiar with lucid dreams?
No.
So I think everyone's had a few in their life, but a lucid dream is like when you're in a dream and you can kind of choose where it goes. It's real fragile, but I find that on Alpha Brain I have them, and I don't know. I like woke up in this huge mansion that I had, and I walked out, and there was a party with like hundreds of people and girls and dudes, and then these animals started showing up, these like fucking lions with wings on like their haunches, and like these big baboons, and I was actually really scared, and there was like a big crocodile with a big head, and I was just like, what the hell is going on? Anyways, I ended up partying with this dude named Sullivan who was actually Italian, and he brought over some like some tequila that was like had peyote in it, but it was like a pink gel. And anyways, he called me on my iPhone, and you know how you take pictures sometimes of people and so their picture shows up? He had like an animated GIF of himself like shooting people that came up on my phone, and I was like, what the hell? Anyways.
For a second there, I thought you were going to say like, and I took a picture of him in the dream, and the picture's still on my iPhone.
God. That could happen. Anyways.
Man, I want to be a part of those dreams, bro. That sounds amazing.
Yeah, yeah. Well, you had one the first time you took it, right? I don't know.
It wasn't as intense as that, though.
This one was really crazy, and I recited the whole thing like this morning for like 4 or 5 minutes. And now I know how something like Alice in Wonderland can get created. Because I mean, I'm not normally that creative or an imaginative dude. But
you asked me to take this pill now.
Anyways,
that's probably not a good idea.
Well, you
know,
it
doesn't work like that, dude.
You would be the only guest that's never taken it. So no pressure.
No.
But anyways, if you go to onit.com and use the code London Real, you'll get 10% off Alpha Brain, New Mood, and we're trying the shroom tech out. I've ordered it, and it's got that, you know, that mushroom.
Cordyceps.
Yeah, the cordyceps mushrooms that should help.
I just want to put something else out there. Man, I don't know about you, but I'm getting loads of emails of people asking me like, they're saying, Nick, just be straight up with me. Does this Alpha Brain stuff really work?
Yeah.
And I just want to say it definitely works. Regarding the mental focus and sharpness, I mean, I think you and I are pretty clean living guys, and we're pretty mentally sharp anyway. So I guess in that area of our lives, it doesn't make too much of a difference. But when it comes to the lucid dreams, I have amazing results with that.
Definitely.
Absolutely incredible.
I just feel a little bit of extra focus, and then there's no caffeine and there's no crash. It's just, I feel a little, I don't know, tuned in. But yeah, give it a try. I mean, a lot of people have tried it. I think our fans kind of like it. And anyways, it's something doing. But anyways, I just wanted to also shout out to 2 of our fans that have left some really cool comments. It was Zach Waterman and George Cotton. Just want to say thanks to those guys.
Hey, guys.
And just keep it coming, man. We love the feedback. And, you know, like us on Facebook and subscribe to us on YouTube. Anyways, I'm going to turn it over to Nick. And as usual, you need to tell me who you brought into the studio.
Man, Brian, honestly, you know, I'm always happy to come do London Real, but today is an extra special day for me because this cat over here, his name's Stene. And,
cool name, by the way.
Yeah, it is quite cool. Eh? The way I know Stene is his younger brother, Jason, is one of my closest childhood friends. We literally grew up together.
In Cape Town?
In Cape Town, in South Africa. And, you know, Stene was always that, like, I didn't have an older brother, but he was always that cool older brother figure in my life. Do you know what I mean? I was like always in awe of the guy. And then he left for London when he was, how old are you, Stene?
21 when I left.
Yeah, so he was 21. I was still about 13 or 14. And then I moved to London when I was 23. And Stene owned a flat in London. And he was basically my first landlord. He was very cool. He gave me I think he gave me a month's free accommodation. And then I started paying him rent, and we became friends. And I'd say...
Is he part of the reason you came, or was it...
Definitely made it easier.
Okay.
And seeing what he was achieving over here and how well he was doing, like, made me want to come to London. And I'd say without a shadow of a doubt, he's one of the 5 people who've influenced me most in the world.
There's a lot of pressure.
Yeah.
Big time.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. Well, so what brought you to London?
Well, after leaving school, I went to the Navy. In those days, you had to go, it was national service.
Wow.
So I did my 2 years. I was a diver in the Navy. And then I just wanted to spread my wings and go for a sort of year gap. And London seemed to be the you know, everybody was going, so I felt like I was missing out, and I took a plane to London, initially only for a year. And London just gets you by the short and curlies, you know. It creeps in. And
how long ago was this?
This is 1994.
Okay.
So I pretty much spent all of my 20s until I was 36. And then my wife and I moved back to Cape Town. Okay. So we've been back for almost 6 years.
Now, not a lot of South Africans fall in love with this town, right?
I think it's the period of time they spend here, though, because it takes a while. You know, when you first get here, you're in a bed sit. You don't have the quality of life. You may be doing a bar job or really low down in the banking industry in a back office somewhere, or working in IT. It's really difficult to enjoy London. You know, if you're earning £6 an hour or whatever the minimum wage is now.
It is tricky at first.
You know, once you start to get to know the place, and you know, it opens up, and your slice of London is very important too. People don't realise that, you know, wherever you are. Whatever borough you're in, London's only 3 times bigger population-wise than Cape Town, 4 times maybe now. But it feels like it's 20, 30 times bigger, because there's just a different life in every little pie of London. So whether you live in Shoreditch or Wimbledon or Fulham or Croydon, it's just like a totally different city. It doesn't feel, you know, it doesn't feel like it, you can't compare it. And also, you know, people always say to me, well, what do you prefer? Do you prefer Cape Town or London? But you can't compare it, you know. It's like comparing apples with goats. It's not a fair comparison. You know, London, you get sort of 14 days of sun in the year, and Cape Town sunny 300 days a year. But there's something about London that's infectious.
It's an energy, dude. You cannot get it anywhere else.
What is that? Is it the diversity of the people?
Dude, I don't know.
I think it's about the people. You know, it's something that you can't explain with one of your senses. You know, it's nothing that you can touch or see. It's a throbbing. It's unbelievable. You know, you come back. I haven't been back for 2.5 years, but as soon as I get off the tube, bang my Oyster card, and I get out, and I realize, wow, I'm back in the center of the universe. It's a fantastic feeling, you know, and you can feel it. It's just that the streets are throbbing with people, and it's infectious. I get a rush out of that. You know, I don't get excited about a lot of things, but London makes me excited when I come back. But we've just had a 1-year-old. We've got almost a 1-year-old daughter. Lily was born in February. So my wife and I see London through a totally different, in a different light now, because, you know, we've never seen it, what it looks like when it is a child friendly. You know, it's a totally different London to when you're growing up here, when you're in your 20s and 30s and 40s. And I was saying to Nick earlier, people spend all their life here, and you can almost never get bored. But sometimes you need something else. And I love my life in Cape Town. You know, we've got a house with a pool, and I take my dog for a run, and I barbecue on a Tuesday. You know, I don't have to go somewhere for 2 weeks to have a holiday and have my little sort of pie of sun.
Because you're living the holiday.
It's there anytime.
Well, there was
not living a holiday, but
there was some guy in the 1800s who was, I think, a member of Parliament that said, "If you're bored with London, then you're bored with life."
Samuel Johnson.
He who tires of London, tires of life.
Yeah. Okay, that's
Damn
it.
right.
You know, I'm from San Diego, and the first thing people ask me is, "How can I live here?" They're like, "Why aren't you at home with the sun and the women and everything?" And I mean, to be honest, I get a bit bored when I go home, you know, and it's a suburban sprawl, and I don't feel that kind of energy that London has.
Man, I was I moved out to Australia for 6 months, and
right.
Everyone's like, "Oh, it's gonna be amazing. You're gonna live by the beach and go surfing, and the weather's incredible." And man, that stuff's awesome for 2 weeks,
right?
You know, and at the end of it, you're like, you adjust to that threshold very quickly. And the thing about London is, sure, it's only sunny 14 days a year, but goddamn, those are the best fucking 14 days of the year, bro. They're incredible, man.
They are good days. And we've had some sick weather, well, last year, and it's sunny today. Yeah. But yeah, those are good days. I'll give you that. The rainy days are.
Man, I'm in love with this place, dude.
You are?
Fucking love this place.
Because you weren't about a year ago, or 2 years ago.
Dude, I guess 10 years ago. Guy.
10 years ago, Nick thought this was living hell. Seriously, he came to a barbecue in Fulham, a braai. And we were turning meat, and Nick looked over at this 3.5 foot wall in between our neighbours. You know, this is Victorian houses have got a 15-foot width, you know, 5 stories high, but they're 50, and that's your postage stamp of a garden. And Nick just couldn't believe it. He said, "Is this it? Is this your garden?" I went, "Yeah. What do you mean? Most people don't even have a garden." "No, but it's rubbish. You can see the neighbour's garden." I said, "Nick, it's just, you know, it's totally different. You'll get to like it." And London, you know, Nick can't stop raving about how awesome London is. Yeah. And it's amazing because it's a 180-degree turn to 10 years ago. You know, it's gripped him, and it's amazing. And it is an amazing place. And I'm just fortunate my wife's British, and I come back once a year. and I'll never write off moving back full time. Just for now, when Lily's between sort of 1 and 6, I wanted to be running on the grass and playing with dogs and doing things. And you could have that in London. It's just,
it's not child friendly, is it?
It's not child friendly, except for Starbucks. Starbucks is pretty child friendly.
But one thing I'd say is, especially we've got some of our viewers are asking questions on Facebook about how you got a visa here, and I'm guessing they're thinking about making a move. It's not paradise, right? There are days when I wake up and I look out and it's, or like it's 4 o'clock in the afternoon. Not saying that I wake up at 4 o'clock, but there's days where it's 4 o'clock in the afternoon and it's dark already, and it's that miserable fucking grimy thing, and you're on the tube and people are like bumping into you and everyone's got that sour look on their face and they just want to get home, and and sometimes that kind of grinds you down a little bit, but I think the positives far outweigh the negatives.
I mean, I think as Stene said, my first couple of years here were hard because I don't know about you guys, but I found that most of my circle of friends actually aren't English in this town. They're actually non-English. And I found it was kind of hard to break through, get to know people, getting used to, there's some great food in London, especially now, but back then getting used to the usual food. Like you said, those Victorian houses where you're like, are you joking? I mean, I'm from San Diego, you're from Cape Town, where you've got pools and barbecues and big, nice houses. And here it's like, everything seems kind of like out of a Harry Potter movie or something.
Yeah. But you get to like those houses, and they've got character.
They do have character.
There are positives with London, definitely. I was in a slightly different situation. I think I was there for 13 and a half years.
Wow.
So my first 3 or 4 years, my first 2 years I was there, a lot of my friends were South African or Antipodean. So, Aussies, Kiwis, South Africans, and we'd go off and run with the bulls in Spain and, do crazy things. Most of my first 2 years, I think I was drunk most of the time, like most Kiwis and Aussies were, and South Africans in those days.
They like to have a good time.
Yeah, every bit of money that you spent, you had no responsibilities. It was all just one big party. So the first 2 years is more or less a blur. But it was a good party, and then people go home, and South Africans, especially with a 2-year work visa, they end up going back to South Africa. So you stop having South African girlfriends, and your South African friends, a few of them, like you and Alistair, they've stayed here and they've made a life. They've married or met English girls, and they've made a life here. And that's what happened to me. And so I got reintroduced to England the sort of English way because of my wife.
Oh, right.
I was with her for a long time before we got married, and I got to know all of her friends and sort of do what they do, which probably wasn't very different, after I'd been here for 5 or 6 years. So I experienced 2 sides of London, and I'm really grateful for it. And I come back now, and I've still got friends because of that. And then I've got guys like Al and Nikki who are here all the time. And you don't sound like you're going to leave ever now.
Did you have a visa to stay here? Because you said South Africans can only usually stay for like a 2-year work visa, and then they have to go.
Well, actually, when I got here initially, we weren't even part of the Commonwealth. We only became part of the Commonwealth after the 1994 elections. Okay. And I got here in March 1994. So I didn't even have a work visa. So I was really just on holiday. And then I went home and I could apply for a work visa. So I applied for a 2-year work visa. And then during my work visa, because my granddad's British, I managed to apply for indefinite leave to remain. And eventually I got a British passport. So I got a British passport after about 6 years, and Nick's on a European passport as well, and that's how Nick could stay. So.
It's smart to get that passport. I got mine as well. And when you're on a work visa, one of the guys on Facebook asked about me, and I worked for a company in the city, and they can usually afford that process of applying for a visa. And I think I had to prove I was uniquely qualified, so they have to post a position for my job in the UK, and then they have to prove that they hire me for that.
I would have thought that they'd just send a picture of you, and once they saw how extremely good looking you were, that would just be taken care of, right?
And I'm starting to get a fan base
visa then.
So, but yeah, I got a visa, but it was only for that company. So if I got sacked or left it, I would have to leave the country or apply for a new visa. It's quite a process. And then they make you leave the country to come back. And so as soon as I got my residency, I got it. And as soon as I got my passport, I just bagged it. Because you never know what's going to happen. Hell, the UK might even leave the EU. You never know. So I was just like, let's just get it.
On what you spoke about earlier, Stene, Stene's that guy. He's always got a story. He's had such an immense range of life experiences that he can tell you about working as a bouncer in Greece, or running with the bulls in Pamplona, Spain. Or
you recommend that?
Oh, it's awesome. You got to do it.
Gosh.
Yeah. Drunk.
Because everyone drinks all night before the running,
you drink all night. Generally, you go to the main square, and you either open up your sort of 750 bottle of sangria or your equivalent bottle of beer, whatever your tipple is, and you spend the whole night drinking and jumping off they've got a statue in the middle of this, I think it's called the muscle bar. And people jump off and the crowd catch you. I didn't do that. It's the craziest thing to do. It's more dangerous. It's a fact. It's more dangerous than running with the bulls. Because how it works is the beginning, the morning, people open up and they start drinking. So the catchers are pretty sober. But it's only the real brave who jump off in the mornings. But as you're drinking, you're thinking, well, I'll do that. I can do that. It's only 20 foot. There's loads of people down there. I'm going to land on people even if they don't catch me. So at 4 o'clock in the afternoon, if you jump in because you've got Dutch courage in. The problem is the catchers are also drunk. So people are, the ambulance is pulling in there often. Wow. But the run is awesome. I mean, so you drink all night. Literally, they're bars that are 15 foot wide, like Victorian houses, and they're right next to each other like a terraced row of houses. And every bar is playing different types of music. One bar's playing Nirvana, or it was, I did it in '94. One bar's playing Nirvana, next bar's playing house music, the next bar's playing Guns N' Roses, and you just go from bar to bar. And then before you know it, it's sort of starting to get light. And at 7 o'clock, you go to the start and you run at the bulls.
How close did you come to getting like a horn in the ass?
The bulls are pretty quick. I mean, if you're going to get into the arena, the bulls more or less will run past you, no doubt. You can't. I think there's 12 bulls in the run. It's only an 800 or 900 meter run, but the bulls are going to pass you. So and you're running on cobblestones the whole way. So you got to watch your footing. That's the most important thing.
Is it a big crowd or is it only a certain number of people that do it?
No, it's a massive crowd.
Okay.
There's thousands and thousands of people. A lot of people don't get into the arena. People don't realize you do the running of the bulls. So you do the actual trip, dog legs into an arena, and then they close it off when it gets full. So, a lot of people run and they've been too slow. They didn't queue up early enough in the morning. Because the Spaniards, obviously, the thing with, they want to get into the arena because when you're in the arena, that's where you prove your manhood because that's where it gets down and dirty in the arena. The run, people do the run, no problem. You can try and get out and everything. But once you get into the arena, they close the doors and for 45 minutes, the bulls get corralled off. Okay. And then you see a whole, Spaniards sitting down like they're at assembly, in front of these double doors, 10 deep and about 20 meters wide. And they open these doors and they let the bulls out 2 at a time and the bulls obviously run over them.
Over them?
Yeah, over them. And then the bulls are in the ring with you. So the same bulls that ran that morning are in the ring with you. Needless to say, they're pretty pissed off. Yeah. And they're trying to hook people, and it's epic.
Did you go in the arena or just?
I got into the arena. Yeah. I ran twice. The first time I didn't get into the arena. The second time I got into the arena because the Spaniard that I was with said you have to get into the arena, otherwise it's like you didn't run. So I did it again. Wow. Roberto, thanks.
And then the idea is just to avoid the bulls?
Yeah, and it's hectic because, there's 12 bulls, so you can see 2 or 3 bulls over here and there, and then all of a sudden, you just see people go, and then you look back and there's a bull right behind you. And some people get so scared they try and jump out of the arena, but the crowd throw you back in.
Fuck,
so you're in there for 45 minutes. It's
the crowd throw you back in?
Yeah, you can't just jump out. So it's epic, and it's
crazy.
Wow. Stene, see, I told you, dude, this guy's got
no, it's great. You definitely got to do it. You have to do it. Hemingway did it. He's a legend.
You know what? We should do it on ayahuasca.
Oh, gosh. I have been thinking a lot about ayahuasca.
Me too, man. Stene, I wanted to ask you, some of the most fascinating stories and entertaining stories that you've related to me were about your time in the Navy. Now, for those of you who don't know, Stene mentioned earlier in the show, he was not just like an ordinary Navy recruit. He actually became a Navy diver, which is the most difficult thing to achieve in the Navy. And I'd just like to know if you could tell us a little bit more about that.
Is it considered like the badass thing to do when you go in, like a fighter pilot in the U.S.? Like, did you go for it?
Not a fighter, it's a little bit like the SEALs.
Okay.
But except without all the equipment because the budget's a little bit more constrained in South Africa. So it's cool. Good bunch of guys. It's a difficult thing to do. You go through sort of a set of selection criteria. So, the normal sort of phys ed things, push-ups and swim tests and everything. And how they do it is they do a sort of set of selections where they've got maybe 40 people doing selection at a go. And it's pretty difficult. About 5 people make it out of each of the group of 40. And they eventually, in our year, they had three classes at 12, an Alpha Bravo Charlie class, and 8 of us qualified in the end. There were some ship's divers that came on in between. So it's, to finish the whole course is quite a big deal.
For the year?
Yeah, 8 for the year.
Out of a pool of how many?
2 classes a year.
So out of each class, how many? What's the total pool in the class?
Out of 36.
36, okay. And I remember you telling me about one of the tests that you had to do, which was you had to swim through a tunnel that had a series, if I remember correctly, that had a series of along the tunnel there were a series of points where you could stop and there were holes that you could take a breath, and then there were guys like jamming sticks.
That's a harbour wall swim.
Could you explain?
There's all sorts of things at different stages of the course. They have different tests to see that you can get through, and the instructors, they're old school instructors.
I can imagine.
And so you do harbour wall swims where you actually swim in a harbour wall, and there are recesses cut out where they hide in, and then when you come past, they grab. And we used to dive with these cylinders called twin dragers. I think they're French sets. They might be German, but you have a soft inhalation and exhalation. It's not like the modern demand valves that you have today or regulators.
Okay.
They're soft, so you can actually, if you're trying to breathe in, they can hold them and squeeze the air, so you can't breathe any air in. And obviously, or if they do the other side, you can't
trying to
breathe
make you
any air
panic
out.
and make sure you remain
that's
calm.
the whole thing. They just want to see that if you can panic underwater. So the whole time they taking air away from you or doing something to see how you can cope in a panic situation. And some people just can't do it. Some people are physically so strong, they can, in the day, they can do 1,000 push-ups, but you take someone's air away, it's a whole different story.
So were you always a swimmer, or is it just a mental game that you have to prepare yourself?
I was always a swimmer. I played water polo at school, but for me it was a test, and it was a great time. I look back now, some of my great friends are still either diving offshore on the rigs, or they're in different careers. But we have sort of once a month on a Tuesday, we meet up for a couple of Swifties in a pub, and talk about old times. So we're like old men talking about, the older you get, the more hardcore you were.
That's funny.
I look back, there's some classic stories. I mean,
so was it the deep water dives that were the scariest?
Well, actually,
for you?
Part one dive is not. You only qualify at 39 meters, and you
only.
Yeah,
have you scuba dived, Wayne?
I have. I took a course in a pool, which was still uncomfortable enough, and then I went out.
Open water one.
Yeah, I think it was. And then I went in when I was in Bali. I went under it with like. I shouldn't have gone, and then the guys were just like taking us down and holding us down and stuff. But I find it really scary, and I was only like 10 or 15 meters.
Quite claustrophobic, huh?
Yeah, and just the whole idea that once your air goes, you panic. Like you said, you could bench press 200 kgs, but if you're under there and you're out of air, it's just a mental game. I'd say it's much harder than even being choked. It's like there's just no air.
Wow. But there's pretty much always air. I mean, nowadays you've got gauges. In the Navy, you don't dive with gauges at all. We didn't when I was doing things. You had a reserve gauge that you pull down, and that gave you an extra 30 bars worth of air. But most of the time, it's the instructors taking air away from you. Okay. It's just testing you all the time to see how much you can take mentally, and if you can't take it, then
so what is a Navy diver? What were they ultimately trying to prepare you for? What would, like, let's say you had continued along that route in the Navy, what would you be the guy who's like planting a mine on an enemy ship, or what would your...
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, obviously you're always preparing for war, and hopefully there isn't going to be a war, but if there is, they want to have someone who, if the ship's coming to harbour, you need to be able to do a J search on a big ship, so you have guys that go down and check that there are no limpet mines under the ship, because obviously you don't want them to blow up, a ship in the harbour and destroy your whole fleet. So, it's training people to do everything. I mean, you get guys who specialise in underwater demolition, you get guys that are underwater combat, you get all sorts of things, but it's just preparing you, like all the other, artillery and Air Force guys, it's just preparing you for a war situation.
Okay. Stene, I have another question for you. Another thing I didn't tell you about him is, Stene, to me, in my mind, if I had to give you one label, it would be the king of positive thinking. Wow. Like you seem to me like someone who just wants to just squeeze the juice out of life. He'll try anything once. He's successful in everything he does. I mean, most of you don't know that Stene's also a successful property developer. And my question to you, I've been wondering about this a lot, is was there a point in your life where you made this decision to be as positive as possible, or is it just the way you're wired, or where does this come from?
That's a good question. I don't really know if there was a point where I thought, I'm so negative, I'm going to be positive, or I just need to be positive. And look, Nick, you see the positive side of me all the time, but everybody has ups and downs, and you just can't dwell on those downs. Like I say to you all the time, you need those downs. Those downs are important. I use the sort of metaphor all the time that those downs, it's like a roller coaster. You need those downs, because those downs give you the velocity to get to those new ups. If you didn't have those downs, you wouldn't know how good the good times are. So the downs are really important, but you need to take the positives from where you are. I used to say it to you all the time when in your first 2 years when you were here and you were moaning about London or life in general, and I used to say to you, Nick, you got to suck up the good things, Find out what you like about London, do more of that. And it's the same with Cape Town. There are plenty of times I can be negative. in general, you know, so many South Africans are so negative about South Africa. And in some ways, there's reason to be, but there's so many positive things happening on that side too, that you've got to, excuse me, you've got to love where you are. If you don't love where you are and you can't find anything that you find positive, you need to move somewhere that you can find that. Because you've got one life, and you know, it goes by like that. Yesterday I was 19. I was running with the Bulls last week. You know, it's 15 years ago.
I think in London or any city, sometimes you get kind of locked into a pattern where you just go to the specific places and you forget, like you said, London has 25 different cities in it. And sometimes you just need to try something new or get out of your pattern. I find myself doing sometimes the same things over again. And I'm like, sometimes I get down on London, I'm in Shoreditch, and, you know, it gets pretty rough around here sometimes. And I'm just like, why am I here when I could be in Geneva looking at a lake? But it's just, I think you got to try to change your routine up. But I don't know how to do that sometimes.
Man, sometimes, speaking of changing up your routine, you know, I realized just how quickly the human organism, myself in particular, becomes stuck in its ways. Like, if I
stabilizes, right?
Exactly. I walked a specific route to work, and one day I just said to myself, "Fuck! I got to change this route up. I got to turn left instead of turning right here, and see where this takes me." And you know, and shit, it was actually a shorter way. I saved like 5 or 10 minutes off my journey, and this was all because I wasn't walking with blinkers on. You know, and yeah, we speak about this a lot, Brian, and it's good to see you on the same
It's not
page.
your fault. We're creatures of habit. That's how I engineer it. You've got to constantly be giving yourself a reason to do it. You know, and to see something different is a reason. And to find out that you've saved time, I mean, that's a mundane, boring example, but there's so many, you need to go and see things. My traveling, when I look back, is the most important thing. And you know, I love London because London gave me the opportunity, not just financially, but London's so central that you could go to Europe, you know, you could go to New York for the weekend shopping, or you could go to surf in California, or go gamble in Vegas, or out of the States. Obviously, Europe's on your doorstep, so you can go skiing, and that's what that's what frustrates me a little bit about Cape Town, is that I've got family and my needs are looked after in a different way in Cape Town, but London gave me that sort of central hub where it gave me access, my gateway to the rest of the world. I know that sounds cheesy. But
do you find in South Africa that it's hard to get something diverse without traveling for 6 or 10 hours?
Cape Town's pretty diverse over season because a lot of people go to Cape Town, but it's nothing like London. I mean, London is...
I love Cape Town, by the way. I spent a couple of weeks around. I just loved it. I love the food. I love the vibe, and I really did enjoy it there a lot.
It's a cool place. But I mean, look, if you're in Cape Town and you want to go overseas, it's very expensive, for the average person there. And it's a huge ordeal. It's like to get anywhere like meaningful, it's a 10 or 12 or 16 or 24-hour flight. You know, here if I want, I can be in New York in 4 or 5 hours, and you know what I mean. Instantly, it's just
or Switzerland in too, and these are completely different people and cultures.
Exactly. And
but you've also got to realize, Nick, that and I thought about this a lot too. I thought I'm going to feel so isolated, and I'm moving to somewhere where there's nothing around. But I realized I didn't see anything in my own country. You know, I haven't been to Kruger. I mean, it's embarrassing. I'm 39 years old. I've never been to the Kruger National Park. I haven't been to Mozambique. I've been to Malawi. I've been to Zimbabwe. I've been to Zambia. I've been to Namibia. But there's so many places on our doorstep: Madagascar, the Seychelles, Maldives. You know, and that's close to us. So I just think, well, I need to just explore a different part of the world.
Yeah, it's
if
like
I
you
ever
just
move
tune
back
it
to
out.
London, then those places would be a mission to go to. So I've got lots of things that are on my tick list. And I come back to London once a year and fill up my boots on a summer sale or a Christmas sale, and we love being here when we're here. And my wife, she misses London, but there's just different things that I need to do there.
Yeah. I'm just curious, since you're a little bit older than Nick, how South Africa's changed in the last 20 or 30 years, for good or for bad, or I mean, what's your perspective on it? Because you've seen a lot of change.
I see a lot of positive change. I think for the general South African being there, and some of them have seen a negative change in quality of service provision and things like that. But there was always going to, there's always going to be a dip before it gets better. There's a whole sort of socio-economic group in that has to be educated, and that's happened now. I went back in 2006 and did a post-grad law degree, and the people in my class were of the full cross-section. Socio-economically, it's unbelievable how things have changed.
10 years before, that would have never.
10 years before, it wouldn't have happened at the same scale. And you see, look, there are lots of bad things that happen in Cape Town. There are lots of bad prejudices that they have to die out with the older generation. That's not gonna. It's not gonna happen quickly. It's gonna take time. But the younger generation, they're already joking. I mean, over here, you don't sort of talk about it, you know, you white people do this or you black people do this. At home, it's a banter with young 20-year-olds. They sort of make a joke out of it, you know, to say these are your characteristics. And it's bad to generalize, but sooner or later, you're going to need to generalize about something to make any sort of conversation. So, you know, my problem with South Africa is that race seems to be brought up far too much still now.
Okay.
In 2012 or 2011, it still seems to be the most contentious issue that gets brought up. You know, if there's an argument or something, it becomes racial, where it's nothing to do with race. It's an argument like if there's a car accident or something, then it'll escalate into something that's racist, and that really bothers me, and it's something that really needs to disappear. But it's going to take time to change.
Do you think the joking about it is a good sign when people can have a laugh about it?
With the sort of younger crew. I mean, I have it at work as well. You know, I've got a great guy in the bank. I do a lot of construction for the banks, and there's a young architect who works there, and Mfundu, he's a great guy. And we have total banter all the time. The older generation look at us and they think we're going to get into a fisticuffs. It's like, we're just joking. And
do you think it's similar to the States where you know, we had such a long history of slavery, and then we had the Civil War, and then that was supposed to change everything. And then 100 years later, you got Martin Luther King walking and getting hosed down. And then even 10, 20 years after that, we have affirmative action. I mean, it took us as a country, and we're still not there, you know, 150 years, because it was such a deeply ingrained, you know, socio-economic difference.
No, definitely. I think it's, look, hopefully it won't take 150 years. Hopefully technology and access to education, you know, things are happening far quicker now. So hopefully it's just going to take a generation. But there's going to be an older generation that think that things have gone, you know, down.
Right, all the grandpas.
Yeah, or, you know, even not necessarily my parents. My parents' generation will say, oh, this country's gone to the dogs. And I keep saying to them, well, how? I mean,
all the parents say that, don't they?
We've built 560 houses a day since the 1994 elections.
Yeah, but you spoke about human nature, and I think one of the saddest things about human nature is our tendency to romanticize the past. Everyone does it, man. I know I do it, you know, and it's I think it's just the way it's always going to be.
It is to a certain extent. I mean, the Russians are doing that a lot now, and they romanticize the Soviet Union, because back then, you know, there weren't these oligarchs that had all this money, and at least they had bread on a regular basis. And now they're complaining that they're like, oh, remember the Soviet Union? And a lot of people are like, what are you guys, crazy? Yeah. You know, maybe they have some points, but I think you're right with the romanticism.
Well, the Russians shopping on Oxford Street for jewelry and Louis Vuitton brands and stuff.
He's spot on a mile away.
They're pretty happy with capitalism.
Do you think technology is going to advance things faster? I mean, you were talking about that as far as equalize, or...
You know, it's so strange you asked that, Brian, because I was just sitting with one of my jiu-jitsu students yesterday, a guy called Ben, super intelligent guy, and he's been reading a book by, I could be mistaken, I think the guy's name's Daniel Pinkerton, and the whole book is about explaining how, you know, there's this erroneous belief that, like, we're living in these dangerous, risky, uncertain times, but actually we've never had it so good. You know, like, again, he spoke about the tendency to romanticize the past. A few hundred years ago, like, living to 30 was a huge achievement. You know, that was massive.
Right.
Now it's something we take for granted. You know, I was just thinking to myself yesterday, I walked into my kitchen and I poured myself a glass of clean water. You know, and it's been such a short period in human history that was taken for
Especially
granted.
in London. Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
150 years ago, you would have caught something by
exactly.
drinking water. And the whole Thames was smelling so bad they had to break Parliament up. But yeah, I'm reading this book.
Can you tell me more about that? What did you say?
Well, I mean, it was called The Big Stink. I think it was in the 1860s or 70s. Actually invented the toilet, the water closet, which you'd think would be a great invention. But the problem is the sewers weren't ready for it. So they were flushing. And they didn't realize that you could contaminate the water with, you know, human waste. And so there's a whole thing, I forgot the guy's name, it was in Soho, where people were getting cholera and dying by the hundreds. And they couldn't see it and they thought it was transmitted through the air, the cholera, but it was actually in the water because of dirty pumps.
Yeah.
And I'll think of the name. And he found the certain pump and shut it down and shut the crisis down. So You're right about the clean water. And the whole Thames smelled so bad they broke up Parliament and went out to the country because it was just a mess. And then they built the sewer systems along the side of the Thames. But
yeah, no, there's been massive improvements on the London side. I mean, Victorian London, there were lots of advances, especially on the sewage side, on the systems, but they didn't separate the the stormwater system to the sewage system.
Right.
So even right now, they're having problems on the south bank of the river. From Putney on, they're busy doing some construction there, because when it rains heavily, the stormwater floods, and that takes some of the sewage down into the river.
Wow.
So it's still happening now, but the Thames is a different beast altogether. I mean, 30 different species of fish thrive in the Thames.
Seriously?
If you see cormorants on the birds on the Thames, they have to eat their body weight in fish every day. So if they can survive on the Thames, that's a really positive. I don't know how long you've been here, but Nick, you'll remember there was a whale
Yeah,
that went as far as Putney Bridge, or
he swam up.
That's pretty special.
Yeah, it's come a long way. It's
So
still not the prettiest river in the world, is it?
no.
But you were talking about technology. I keep reading this book. I think I've been reading it for 3 months. It's called The World is Flat. And he was talking about, now the chapter is about just the amount of information. Just Google, as far as a person now, you can empower yourself with all this information, and you don't have to waste time when you used to have to go to a library and look up a book and you couldn't find what you want. And now you can find it instantly from a mobile platform. And he just talks about how it's just accelerating all of us and leveling the whole playing field.
Well, I don't argue with my friends anymore, because if there's a disagreement, I'll just Google it right
That's
there.
even Rogan said that.
He's like, in one hand, and I'm Googling it with the other.
Guys don't get in fights anymore because you just Google it, so there's no way to fight.
Man, it's the most, we have so much opportunity at our fingertips. And again, taken that we represent a very small percentage of the world's demographic. I mean, what is it like? I don't know what the figure is off the top of my head, but most people on this planet do not have the privileges that we do. But for people like us, I'm just thinking back in my life and the times when I was kind of depressed or down or sad about something. And once a friend said to me, he said, "Nick, you actually are too lucky to be able to be sad, because you have everything you could possibly want. You have no right to be sad." And I was thinking, God damn, he's so correct in that statement. You know what I mean? It would be wrong to take for granted everything we have. Just the fact that we can sit here and send London Real out to people all over the world and fly to South Africa on holiday. It's amazing. Blows my mind.
As humans, like you said, we kind of equalize. And then it's like you wake up the next day and you're like, okay, my life's, just kind of ho-hum. Like celebrities. You see people get to a celebrity level and then they try to commit suicide. And you're like, what's going on with you? But they've kind of equalized and now they're not challenged. And I think it's hard to continue to challenge yourself. And I think it's hard what you said, when you get into a low point. I find it with myself where I'm like a little bummed out. It's hard to recognize that and realize it's part of the roller coaster. I mean, how do you do that?
I don't know, but I mean, I find myself always stronger after those lows. Look, it might take a week or a month, but I always look back and I appreciate those times, and it sounds a little bit cosmic, but it's true. Those lows are what makes me.
The problem is realizing when you're in a low, because when you're in a bad mood, it seems that there's never an end to it.
It envelops you, and you're like, oh my God, this is going nowhere. Yeah, and then I guess you have to just keep pushing through. But it's funny. One of my favorite, rappers, his name is Ice-T. He said something one time. He's like, unless you've been through some problems and some real drama in your life, he's like, I can't really hang around with you, because it builds character. And when you've been with someone, sometimes you meet like a 20-year-old girl or boy, and they've had this nice life and gone to college, and like you can't really talk to them because they haven't had a big punch in the face, and it's just kind of nice when you meet with someone that's gone through some struggle, because they just have a good perspective about it.
That was me when I first got to London, dude.
Was it?
Yeah. Dude, I'm embarrassed to admit this, Brian. In South Africa, if you come from like a middle class to wealthy family, I don't know if it's like this anymore. I haven't been home for a while, but like if you come from a middle class family, you can afford like a domestic employee to clean your house, right? And I mean, we call them maids, right? And so throughout my life, I grew up with a maid, someone who would like help my mom with the housework and help raise us kids, and it's just what it was, And when I arrived in London at 23, man, I'm embarrassed to admit this, but I had never washed a dish in my life. Not a single time, dude. And it was a massive shock. I mean, like, my parents had this huge house with a swimming pool and like, waited on hand and foot almost. Well, not really, but, and then I'm living in this little room that Stene's renting out to me, and I have to like cook all my own meals, wash all my clothes, wash my dishes. It was a big shock to the system.
Could you cook? No,
I still can't cook.
No, but I made him wash dishes.
You made me clean.
In fact, I put him on a rota.
You made me clean toilets, motherfucker.
Yeah.
You got to do that in your life, man.
That was your low, and look where you are now.
Yeah, dude. What can I say, right? I owe it all to Stene.
No, it's good. What I was surprised about, at home we've got the equivalent of Sky or Virgin or whatever. We've got satellite TV, and I've got Sky on a lot to see the international news, and I keep talking about this recession, obviously, and I've seen you guys speaking about it, and we are obviously in a recession, but on the streets of London, it is unbelievable the amount of money that's being thrown around. I mean, okay, it's Christmas, so it's probably not the best sample that I've taken, visually to see what was going on, but it's just unbelievable. And the construction that's going on in London as well.
Yeah, it is
just,
crazy.
Just in residential streets. I'm not even talking about commercial buildings. It doesn't look like London's in a recession. It almost looks like it's a bubble all on its own.
I think London is, I mean, the rents in this neighborhood are up 20% in the last year. I mean, this is a recession. And this is this is Shoreditch. It's not Knightsbridge. But you go to Knightsbridge and you see all the money. Yeah. It's the Saudi money, the Chinese money, the Russian money. And they're so wealthy, they just don't care. I mean, if their kids going to university here, £2 million will buy that house and they can just stay there. And it's crazy. I had a good friend of mine, Chris, who originally started training me in jiu-jitsu, and I said, oh yeah, we're in a recession. He said, what recession? He said, I'm getting phone calls to be headmasters of these schools. He said, you just need to look, he said, for where the work is and find a niche, I think.
If you got the skills, London can still work for you now. I mean, it's... I'm really... before Christmas, I was watching Sky over here with the family, and £43.9 billion in 2 days, the retail shops.
That's it.
That's a spend.
Yeah.
But is London an anomaly? Because
£1 billion.
That's wrong. I mean, how much of the recession is actually just scaremongering by the media to sell newspapers and sell airtime on news shows?
Well, I don't know if that's the sole reason.
No, but I'm saying how much of the reason
it's newsworthy.
I think it's a confidence issue, and once people are less confident, in the U.S. is the prime example. I mean, it's like 80% of GDP is consumer spending, and when you tell people there's a recession, they'll be like, oh, I'm not going to buy that durable good, that car, that boat, that in America they just constantly expect to have.
It's sentiment. It's the same with the stock market. 2 or 3 CEOs, CEO of Merrill's and Goldman Sachs and J.P. Morgan, if they all agree that we're in a recession, we're in a recession.
Yeah, the
sentiment becomes reality.
It's like a run on a bank. If everyone is scared of the bank, they'll take their money out and it will crash that bank. But if you can restore confidence, then they'll be like, okay, everything's going to be
going
fine.
back to Harrods, I got a great story.
Oh yeah, so anyway, I was there for Christmas too.
It's Lily's first birthday, almost first birthday. She's 11 months old, and so I want to take her to see Santa, and Santa's at home are rubbish because they wear shorts. It's not proper Santa. So, the tree's all disheveled and there's no snow. I mean, it's 31 degrees. So I thought, okay, I'm going to show an authentic Santa. So we're going to Harrods because, he's the proper Santa. He comes from Lapland. He's there. Ho, ho, ho. So I'm going down and we got the buggy, and it's Mom's day off. So she's in Fulham. There we are in Harrods, 4th floor, going down, going to Santa's grotto. So I get to the grotto and there's someone with security, Santa's got security now. He's got a door woman. And she's like, what time's your appointment? I'm like, what? I need an appointment to see Santa. Yes, you need an appointment. Go and book. She points me to the other side. So I think, really, I need an appointment to go see Santa. So I go all the way to the other side. I go all the way to the other side, and I'm playing it in my head thinking, I'm really, I've got to ask this woman how I would like to make an appointment to see Santa. It's got to get to you. So I get to the girl and I was like, hi, I need to make an appointment to see Santa. And she's like, oh, sorry, we fully booked.
So you couldn't see him?
We fully booked until Christmas Eve. That's what most people just think of me. And of course, it's Harrods. It's Santa at Harrods. If you don't book 18 months in advance, you bug it.
Yeah.
So I just said to Lily, well, I'll have to see Santa in a couple of years.
But she was crushed.
Yeah.
So she didn't see Santa at all?
No, she saw some other Santa at Covent Garden, but it's not the same.
No. Yeah. Harrods is a bit nuts. I find that place almost intoxicating when I go there. There's just so much going on. And the sales girls, they're all wearing black and they're all done up. And I'm just like, there's like hundreds of them. And I'm just like, I got to get out of there.
I prefer Selfridges.
Really?
Yeah, man. I never saw what the big thing with Harrods was.
Really?
I remember Stene telling me once, it was on one of his little, when I was in my I don't dig London phase, and he was like, this is the center of the universe. And he would say, look at Harrods. You can walk into Harrods and you can buy anything you want. If you tell them, I want an elephant, they'll get you an elephant.
It's true.
It's pretty close.
It's true. They'll get you an elephant.
Yeah.
Seriously, that's their sales pitch. They get anything you want. In fact, you can choose what type of elephant you want. Indian, African. They'll get you an elephant.
Seriously. Come on.
Seriously.
Really?
You can buy anything from Harrods.
Yeah, that is apparently one of the things. But still, dude, prefer Selfridges.
You do?
Yeah.
Well, it's not Harrods is pretty touristy.
Yeah.
So it's good. The real Santa goes there, though. And obviously, because there's a 18-month waiting list.
Yeah, I'm not surprised you couldn't see Santa, especially the Herod Santa.
Yeah.
So you're going back to South Africa soon?
We're going back on next week, on Tuesday. So looking forward to 12 hours with a 11-month-old. It's always great.
Oh, you're that dude you're that family on the plane that everyone hates, right?
No, on the way here, she was fine. You get like a little bassinet that, you can book. You book one of those bulkhead seats and you get a bassinet, which is all really cool, and the baby can go in there. This is the theory. The baby goes in there, and then for 12 hours you don't hear her or him. No ways. She would not go in that. Even asleep, when she was asleep, my wife tried to put her in, and she just knew that wasn't her bed. So I'm not going near that. You have to hold me.
Look what you got to look forward to, Brian.
Oh my God.
So we had to hold her for
Better hurry up. So I think they were offering
shifts.
child-free plane flights or something in the States.
First class, I think. Only first class.
I took first class once, and there were these two kids in there, and I was like, oh my God.
Seriously?
I just spent God knows how many thousands of pounds on this, and they were running around, and I was like, oh,
seriously,
killing me.
No, I can't afford first class.
Dude, I've only ever taken first class once, and it was amazing. It was everything it's cracked up to be.
It is, right?
Yeah.
I flew my dad over to London one time, first class, I think, and he was just walking in, and they were serving him like steak, and he got to London, and he was like, high roller.
That's cool. For those of you who don't know, you can see Freeman Rose in The Supremacy.
I might post that on the London Real page.
Oh, cool.
So, and business, how's that for you, and how's business in London?
It's a difficult. I went back, and obviously being here for almost 14 years, you lose your network, and your network is always your business, really. No matter what you do, if you're out of your network, it took a long time for me to get back, and I've got a mentor that I see sort of once a week, and he looks at everything, my financial affairs and my personal affairs, and he's a great guy. And he said, look, I was a little bit negative when I went back to South Africa, actually. Like, I can't make this work, and going back to London. And he used to sit with me and say, listen, it's not Cape Town's fault. It's your fault. You disconnected yourself out of the network, and now you need to work to get back in the network. So it took me a good 2 or 3 years to get back and not create a network, but I had existing sort of friends that were still there. A lot of my friends had left. They're all over the world, in the States or in Europe or Australia, since the whole world's moving to Australia, it seems.
And people had to start trusting you again as well. That's what it comes down to as well. Yeah.
And your skills are totally different. When you spend that long away, you gain skills that now you have to convince people that I do this now. It's a different. You're selling a different person, and you change as well. You're not the same person. So there's so many changes that are happening that you have to reinvent yourself and get back and really create a network from scratch.
I have a mentor. Big shout out to you, Steve. He was saying to me, the older he gets, the easier business becomes, because his network is so strong and established now that people will just call him and say, Steve, I've got this opportunity. Do you want in? And he'll be like, yeah, let me think about it. Whereas before he had the network, he had to hustle and he had to go out and find things. But now the network brings it to him. And it comes back to that old adage, it's not what you know, it's who you know.
It really is, and it was the same with my business in the city. I mean, it took years to build, but then you have these relationships with these people that you might not think are the value, but that is your value.
That is your value.
At the end of the day, it's your word, and it's the person that you are, and that only happens over time. That doesn't happen over Facebook. It happens over doing business on a regular basis, seeing people, meeting people, and
trust, right? At the end of the day.
Trust, and I mean, they say about Harvard Business School, you don't go there to learn, but you go there to meet the people that later you're going to do business with. And
that's really interesting.
It's hard. But when you're in school, you're like, okay, I just got to get the grades. But then later you find out.
It's the same even with schools. I mean, a lot of people have this tussle between, well, should I send my kids to state schools or private schools? Because, I don't want them to be too full of themselves or be a snob, but I also don't want, the other bad things on the other side. So it's a really difficult situation. South Africa is exactly the same thing. There's 3 or 4 really good schools, the traditional schools, and there's some new private schools as well. And there's always this tussle up between, well, should I send them? Because a lot of people say, well, they're just too snobbish and they're too full of themselves. But they are great characters that have come out of any school. So you've just got to think, well, what do you want? But it's the network on those good schools that you cannot, you can't falter the network. The networking ability and you keep your child you try and make them as good morally as you can, but their friends, that network they're going to keep hopefully into university and then into some sort of career. So that's the base, that's the foundation you're building for them.
Would you guys agree with the statement that it's so cliched, but I heard once you can only climb as high as your 5 closest friends, and I've been thinking about that more and more lately, and I've had to look at the people I hang out with. You know, I think we spoke about this in another episode.
We did.
Would you agree with that, Stene?
To a certain extent, maybe. But I mean, your 5 closest friends now are not necessarily. Are you saying you're changing friends all the time? Because you know you're going to be moving, and if you're in Cape Town, you can have those same 5 close friends your whole life. It didn't happen to me. I mean, I've got some of my friends that I had growing up with at school, but my whole life changed coming to London. And I would say on a 5-year cycle, you know, your people that you spend a lot of time with, and that happens to be work people a lot, changes at that same cycle. So maybe if you're looking at those, you know, at it that way,
maybe those 5 or 10,
your 5 that you're refreshing.
But
if you're moving up,
they do constantly change. I mean, they do for me. They do in London when you move. But you know, going back to that networking issue, an ex-client of mine from the city named Luca Favaro, he's got a 7-year-old kid, and he's putting him in private school in London, and it's not cheap. It's like $4,000 a term or something. So he's paying 12, 13 grand for this kid, and he's doing judo and doing, you know, water polo and crazy, learning Chinese and crazy stuff. And he said, Brian, but part of that is the network. He's like, the kids he's going to meet when he's 7 and 8 years old will be the kids later that he will know.
So he's thinking this. He's planning his kid's future this far out ahead already.
I never thought of it like that. But he's right, because these are like the top, smartest, exclusive kids in London, and these are the kids that are going to go on to university and probably be people in industry around the world. And I never thought about networking that young. But he's right. I mean, he will meet friends.
You can't necessarily. I mean, that's a great thing.
But you can't manufacture a life like that.
You got 2 kids going to private schools, and it's a great dream. It's $4,000 a term, 24 grand for that. Then there's a nanny, and nannies these days are 30 grand a year.
Yeah, after
so
taxes.
You know that's over 50,000 already between the nanny and the school. It doesn't include any of their sports or their trips to skiing in Switzerland or anything like that. So it can be a really expensive exercise, but you're investing in your kid's future. But you could have the situation where you do that your whole life, and your kids end up not having a good network, or having a terrible network. And then also from an employer's point of view, they do, you know, it was always great to have that Uxbridge education, you know, you went to Eton and then you went to Oxford, and bam, you've got a job.
In the city, that used to only be those people.
It was the old boy network.
Yeah.
But nowadays, I think people are scrutinizing a little bit more carefully.
Yes.
You know, they're getting people to come in and they're going, listen, this guy might have had a free ride his whole life. Maybe he isn't driven, or she isn't driven. So let's interview this person. Maybe they went to a good state school or a state school, and they paid for their own university, and they got a first, and they're absolutely the most driven person that you want. We want that person to be the CEO. We want that person to be driving an economy or a change in a business. You don't want someone who's had a free ride. So it all depends on the individual, and I think employers are starting to do that now. I've got some pretty heavy hitters that I know. You know, my sister-in-law's a real big player in the banking world, and you know, just the conversations we have, I think she's high up on the HR side, and the sort of gist that I get from her is that she'll scrutinize, you know, someone's CV and really get them in. It's not just a tick box saying, okay, Eton, Oxford, tick, got the job.
Yeah, maybe that pathway that you could lead your kid through. So you put them in the most expensive private schools and they lead this life of privilege. Man, it could fuck them up. It could totally fuck them up. You know, and I read quite a few autobiographies, and some of the most successful guys are the ones who like grew up playing like stickball on the street with a group of kids in downtrodden neighborhoods. You know what I mean? So
it's a motivation factor. And I think the world's flattening as we speak. I think 30, 50 years ago, it was the Cambridge and the Oxford guys that were just in because there was no other information. And now you've seen, but in the city, I mean, you worked there. We had a lot of East End guys with no degrees, and they would be talking like black cab drivers, and then you would have them in the investment banking side, some guy from Oxford. But there's a lot of guys without degrees, at least in my company, doing very well because they hustled and they started off in the back office and they just worked their way up. You know. But
that drive is something that you cannot teach. You know, that drive, it's like fighting spirit for dogs. A Labrador's way bigger than a Staffy, but a Labrador's never going to bugger up a Staffy. Because, you know, a Staffy's
do you think
got
it's born,
spirit.
Or do you think your daughter watches you and she's like, all right, Dad is constantly going for it. He's doing this, he's doing that. She's going to grow up with a similar type drive.
Nature versus nurture.
Yeah. I mean, who knows the answer to that question, right?
No, I think it's born.
You think so?
I think you can learn to a certain extent, but some people just can't be asked.
That is true.
You know, I see people who are driven and people who aren't driven, and it doesn't matter what socio-economic group they come from. You know, I look at the people that I aspire to, you know, or just the general brands that we know. You you know, from TV, the Gordon Ramsays or the Michael Caines or, you know, Richard Branson even. They worked, they've never sat in a cubicle.
Yeah.
You know, they didn't go do an MBA, and MBAs are great, but they didn't go and sit in a cubicle. That's not, you know, Gordon Ramsay grew up on a council estate in Glasgow.
Man, you know, I've started watching Kitchen Nightmares. I'm not a big food buff at all, but you know what amazes me and impresses me every single time I watch that guy?
What's that? How much he yells?
His dedication to excellence. You know, and a friend of mine he had a friend who was a chef for Gordon Ramsay in one of his restaurants.
Okay.
And he said, you know what Gordon Ramsay's hiring process is? He asks you to fry an egg.
Yeah, I just
thought that was amazing.
And that's in one of those episodes, he asked a guy to make an omelet. He said, make a cheese omelet. And the guy couldn't. And he was just like, how can you be a chef if you can't even make an omelet? And he rips through those guys. And it's sad to see it because most of those businesses are failing, right? And they continue to fail, right?
Well, I mean, I've only watched a few episodes, but he seems to turn around quite a few of them as well.
I just finished Anthony Bourdain's Kitchen Confidential.
Amazing
Thanks
book,
for that. But it's really interesting to get and see how hard that business is. And I was thinking about Gordon Ramsay, and I mean, Anthony Bourdain's talking about the burns on his hands, and he's like 54 years old and his knees, and he's working 12, 14 hours a day. I didn't realize.
No, it's a tough business. I mean, chefs are pissed off all the time for a reason. You know, they're stuck in a hot kitchen, and they are. It looks like the Tube, just with gas burners. Everybody's pissed off on the Tube. Everybody's dog's died, or there's some sad story in the Tube, and no one wants to give you eye contact because they're thinking you're a freak if if you just happen to glance and
try to smile, dude, see what happens.
That immediate disconnect.
We had dinner at Claridge's, which is Gordon Ramsay's restaurant, and we were at a table in the kitchen. It was like 6 of us. It was like a 5-hour dinner with city boys, and so we got to watch them kind of yell at each other. And we were waiting for Gordon to come in because apparently back then he was just a terror in the kitchen, just yelling.
Did he come in?
Everyone. No, he didn't. He has a few other restaurants, so he didn't come in. But they were constantly on the ball. Yes, chef. Yes, chef. They tasted everything. They were tasting everything, and they had signs everywhere. If you saw any rodents, you're supposed to let people know right away. But
dude, I'll tell you one thing. After watching Kitchen Nightmares, I am very reluctant to eat in anything but the finest restaurants. But when you see what happens in the back, wow.
Well, Anthony Bourdain said, he said, look at the bathrooms. He said, if the bathrooms aren't clean, he said, those are easy to clean. He said, then imagine what the kitchen looks like. And yeah, I mean, I'm the same way now. I'm looking at everything. Like he said, don't order fish on a Monday. Never order mussels. And I mean, I was up in the Lake District and they had mussels as special. I was just like, no.
Man,
guys, we only got a couple minutes left.
Wow, it's gone quickly.
Yeah, it always.
Fun, huh?
I always said to Nick an hour's too long, but that's gone really quickly.
It races, a lot of people say it's an hour's too long to watch. We're keeping it under an hour now, but I find it's hard to really get to know someone unless it's about that. Because if we had cut this off at a half an hour, then I think we would have missed.
Man, a lot of people tell me an hour is not long enough.
Really?
I mean, we're never going to please everyone, so let's just stick with this and see what happens.
Maybe in the future we do a little extra supplemental half hour that people want to watch. But no, it's been really good. I'm really glad you came in, Stene. I mean, it's the hot seat. You never know what's going to happen, especially with Nick's question.
I was saying to Nick, what's the topic?
Yeah. I mean, I could have dropped something like, "Oh, you circumcised," but I thought Stene's a close friend. I better keep it clean, right?
I am.
That's good info. No, but it's good. We try to keep it unscripted and unedited and just kind of go with what happens. But anyways,
what a pleasure to have you here,
coming on. And
it's been great.
It's about the journey.
It is. All right, guys. Thanks a lot.
Cheers.
All right, bye.
That was a great episode, man.
It's awesome.